Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Nigeria's headline inflation fell to its lowest level in more than 3 years in September, driven by a moderation in food prices. Official data showed on Wednesday, offering some relief to policymakers battling cost of living pressures. The National Bureau of Statistics said the Consumer Price Index dropped to 18.02% year-on-year last month, down from 20.12% in August. The figure represents a 1.76 percentage point decline on a month-on-month basis and a sharp fall from the 32.15% recorded in August 2024. Now, the Consumer Price Index, which tracks the average change in price of goods and services, inched up to 126.8 points in August from 125.9 points in July. Month-on-month inflation stood at 0.74%, lower than 1.99% in July, pointing to slower price increases across the country. Tonight, NTA Tuesday Live will focus on slowing down inflation. But before we go into the conversation, let's get to see this report put together by correspondent Musa Abubakar.
After years of surging prices, Nigeria is finally seeing a glimmer of relief. The National Bureau of Statistics reports that the country's headline inflation dropped to 18.02% in September, the lowest level in more than 3 years. Just months ago, inflation peaked near 35%, leaving families struggling to afford basic goods. But new data show a consistent slowdown, a sign that prices are beginning to stabilize. The biggest driver of this turnaround is food. Food inflation, which accounts for most of household spending, eased sharply to 16.87% in September, down from 21.87% a month earlier. Improved harvest, better supply of grains, and a more stable exchange rate are helping bring food prices down. The slowdown offers some comfort to policymakers battling cost of living pressures. Last month, the Central Bank of Nigeria cut its benchmark interest rate for the first time since 2020, citing projections for continued disinflation.
We are seeing consecutive disinflation. We are pleased. Okay, this is the 5th time consecutive. Our goal is for single-digit inflation. That's our goal. Okay, and that is something that we are very resolute on, and we will not stop until we get there.
Analysts say the move signals confidence that the worst of the price surge may be over. Yet the economic reality remains tough for many Nigerians. And even with inflation easing, prices remain high compared to incomes. As inflation slows and policy shifts take effect, Nigerians are watching closely, hoping that the relief seen in the numbers will soon be felt in their daily lives. In Abuja, Musa Abubakar.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's introduce our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program Professor Uche Waleke, Director, Institute of Capital Market Studies, Nasarawa State University, and President, Capital Market Academics of Nigeria. Prof, good to see you once again.
Thank you so much, Sam. Cyril, it's always my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. We're also joined tonight by Dr. Bakari Wadinga, a distinguished economist and retired Federal Permanent Secretary in the Federal Ministry of Finance. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me, Cyril.
Right.
Also, this is my first time of appearing before you, a nice program of global audience.
Right. That's good to see you. We hope you'll come many more times.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so we had our introduction, and the figures tell a story. But ordinary, everyday, simple folks like us, I suppose what matters at the end of the day is that whatever we're holding can purchase more goods with some extra left, and that's talking about inflation. So when you can look at month-on-month or decline or a slower increase in prices, a lot of us, as I said, ordinary folks, might not strain ourselves over that. What we're looking out for is, can what I have in my pocket
Yes.
purchase more goods
Yes.
at a lower price? Do you see that in the markets right now?
Well, of course, that is what inflation number speaks to. And that is also why it's important that what we are beginning to see now is sustained, for a very long time, to a point where the inflation rate will come down to single-digit level. When you hear that inflation is reducing, as we have it today, in fact, if prices are rising at a slower rate, that is what we are experiencing now. It's not as if prices are not rising, but they are rising at a slower rate. And that's why you had the central bank governor talk about disinflation. So since April of this year, we have experienced slower rise in general price level. That is disinflation. Okay, so that doesn't mean that things are not, for the common man, that the prices are down. It simply means that yes, we are witnessing increases, but at a slower rate. So it's important, therefore, that rate of decline, is sustained to the point where you have it at a single, digit level, and possibly to even have it at a negative value, because that is what we now call deflation. Deflation is where you now begin to see negative inflation rates. You see, for the very first time, if you look at that National Bureau of Statistics report, for the very first time in a long while, we recorded negative inflation rates on a month-on-month basis. Month-on-month basis means compared to August. Okay, that inflation figure was for September. So compared to August, on a month-on-month basis, food inflation actually dropped, instead of a rise. So we had minus 1.57% month-on-month drop in food inflation, month-on-month. And as I said, for a long time. So we need to sustain that before the common man can begin to feel the impact. But as I said, if you look at it broadly, okay, the one would say that the performance of general price level in September, was an improvement, a lot improvement over what we had, previously. And for me, that's majorly on account of two factors. Number one, is the fact that there was obviously increase in food output as a result of the harvest season. So you saw price. I'm sure, Cyril, if you if you have gone to the market recently, I have been to the market recently. I go to markets, around Abuja here, and I can say that I have also practically experienced the fact that prices are not as high as they used to be a year ago, because inflation rate is on a year basis. So with respect to things like gari, okay, beans, tomatoes, but even potatoes. Recently I went to buy, potatoes. So you notice that these items have actually come down, in price. So harvest season is contributing, all right. The other thing too I see contributing to this moderation in prices is the stability that we're having in the exchange rate. And in the month of September in particular, we even witnessed appreciation of the Naira. So the Naira strengthened, and that helped, to also cushion the impact of inflation on especially imported items, which is why you saw that core inflation dropped to from over 20% to about 19%. But the food component is actually the one that created the impact, because food inflation dropped to as low as 16.8%. So by and large, what I'm saying is this: yes, we need to sustain this tempo for the common man to feel it, because if just as you rightly noted, if the common man hears numbers like GDP is growing, for example, macroeconomic indicators are performing, but in the pocket, the common man is not feeling it. Of course, he will not relate to the GDP number growing. The only way he can relate to GDP number growing is when he goes to the market and buys things cheaper. And that is where inflation comes in. So we need to continue to work on inflation. We need to continue to work on the output side, okay, of inflation, while the central bank also continues to ensure that, the Naira continues to appreciate.
All right, thanks so very much. We'll explore all these as we go on. But let me come to Dr. Wadinga. You are a chartered accountant and an economist. And when we hold such discussions, the first thing we want to do is bring it down to the level where everyone can actually see what's in behind the figures. And so what do you see with this statistics turned out by the NBS?
Well, Cyril, this is a good starting point. As you said, I am happy to tell you that I combine both the accounting and economic skill. And what is that? First of all, the starting point is to interrogate. Do we actually have falling inflation? How do you answer that question? You go back to about 4 or 5 years backward and start from 2020. 2020, what was the inflation rate? 13% on the average, year-on-year basis. 2021, 17. 2022, 18. 2023, 24. 2024, you have 32.7. 2025, running year-on-year basis, September, you have 18. That is why the problem is. And that's why I disagree. Why? The answer is simple. What is inflation? Inflation is a general, fall or rise, but here we are talking of increase in prices of goods and services. So if we say the general increase in price of goods and services we define as inflation, how do we measure inflation? We use consumer price index to measure inflation, which is the weighted average of the basket vis-a-vis the money. Now, what is instrumental in telling us the magnitude of change? It is the base year, the base period. What is the base period? The base period is a reference point, and we go to the tail end now, 2025, September 2024, so that I tie the knots from there and you get my bearing. When you go to 2024, 2025, you'll be left startled. When you refer again to 2020, what do you see? First of all, NBS data have to be interrogated. 2020, the base year for imputing the inflation was 2019. Because to give you the framework, for the period 2020 to 2023, NBS used the base year of 2019. Mm-hmm. Do you get the point? Right. Then to compute the inflation for 2023, NBS used the base year of 2009. Then to compute the inflation for 2024, 2025 now, that's why the gameplay is. The 2025 September endpoint use 2024 as base. Then you ask yourself, who is confusing who? What is the objective of that, mix-up? That's why I say, I will tell you that when you get an accountant who is also an economist, you get his analytics different. Now, in accounting and economics, you don't change the principles of calculation, the base period of your accounting, until you rationalize and explain to those who use your data so that they will consume your information with a pinch of salt. But throughout the data of NBS, I've scanned through the period. I've not seen the rationality for that abrupt down and up changing of accounting base. But in accounting, of course, and economics by extension, if I want, as a professional, to put to the public certain information, I will change the base. Let me tell you the implication of changing base. If the base of certain period is changed, then the current period will reflect a different information. Why? If 2025, for example, use 2024 as a base, and that the inflation rate for 2024 was low, the implication is that the correct inflation rate for 2025 will blow out, because low base for 2024 and high inflation in the period of 2025 will mean that inflation for 2025 will be extremely exploited.
Okay.
So the danger here is that look at period when subsidy was removed, and look at the period after subsidy. This is the challenge, because if true inflation figures will be reflected using the base period, you dare not use lower pre-subsidy. Do you get the point?
Okay. So let's bring it down to one very simple question.
Yes.
And that is, are prices of goods and services, particularly foodstuff, lower in October or in September than in August?
Okay, to answer your question again, let me go back to data. The data which tells us that inflation figure for September 2025 as 18. Break it down. You see, first item there is food and non-alcoholic beverages, which takes up 7%. Go next, restaurant and accommodation. It takes up just about 3% approximately, because it's 2.9. Yes. So next, third one,
Transport.
you go to transport. And what do you see there? Is 11. That is on the aggregate. But when you come to it, what you see there is 1.5. Then you go next. Just about what I'm trying to tell you is that the 6 items on that list that makes up that 18%. From that, food and non-alcoholic drinks takes up 40%. So that's where I'm concerned. And that's what made me to go and interrogate. In essence, the 6 items making up that list constitutes 84% of the entire change of price. Now the question is, was there a change in price? These are the reasons why price tend to have changed downward.
Okay. Let me come in here.
All right. Well, we have been joined in this conversation by another guest. Let me introduce Dr. Alphonsus Inyang. He is an agribusiness entrepreneur and national president, National Palm Produce Association of Nigeria, as well as the group managing director, CEO of the Hebron Group. He joins us via Zoom from Uyo. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much, Cyril.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Just to note that you might need to adjust your camera there so that, yes, we have a better portrait of you. Good. Well, and I believe that on the right of the screen, we are joined also by Dr. Muda Yusuf, the CEO of Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise and the former Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce. He also joins us via Zoom from Lagos. Good to see you, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Right. I want to assume that you gentlemen heard the opening comments that we have made. From my introduction, to the first insights given to us by Professor Waleke, and of course, the immediate past speaker, Dr. Wadinga, who tried to give us an insight into why the figures are looking the way it is. So, but let me go to Dr. Muda Yusuf, and can we agree that there's been a drop in the price of goods and services, particularly food items, if we look at September 2025 and August 2025, month-on-month basis, which is where these figures are coming from?
Yes, I agree with what Professor Waleke said, because we have an issue with conceptual issues when we talk about inflation. Because the general feeling out there is that when the government or the NBS announces a drop in inflation, many people will say that they are not feeling it. And the expectation is that once people talk about drop in inflation, they tend to interpret it as meaning a drop in price, which is not the case. A drop in inflation is a drop in the rate of increase in prices. And I understand the feelings of Nigerians generally, particularly since the onset of the current reforms. The current reforms, we cannot overstress this, were reforms that were necessary, but the reality is that the reforms have triggered serious inflationary situation on account of the impact of the reform on foreign exchange and on account of the impact of the reform on energy prices. These two factors are very critical drivers to inflation. So that is the challenge that we are dealing with as we speak. To answer your question directly, we are beginning to see a deceleration in prices. The cost of food, this time last year, is not the same thing as the cost of food now. A bag of rice was selling for close to 100,000, 90,000 this time last year. Today, we are seeing a bag of rice going for 60, 65. That's right, or even less in some situations. Just last week, I was speaking to somebody who bought a motorcycle. It's all this Okada that people use. This motorcycle used to cost over $1 million, 1.2 million, 1.3 million. He bought it at 800,000. So we are beginning to see some moderation in prices. Yes, it's the rate of inflation that is decreasing, but for some commodities, for some prices, some of those prices are coming down. I agree, some of them is as a result of the seasonality of harvest, which, influences price, according to seasons. But of course, there is also the factor of the FX stability. That is also something that has been helping the moderation in prices. But we are still dealing with major issues about the cost of living. There is no doubt about that. And that is why I agree with the position that the government needs to do a lot more with respect to issue of cost of living. We are seeing an improvement in business confidence. The challenges that businesses were facing in 2024 it's not as difficult as it's much less, it's more difficult than what people are facing now. So business confidence is improving. Many businesses that declared losses in 2024, many of them have returned to profitability. So things are beginning to turn the corner. But I must emphasize again, this is a recovery process. The reform itself is a journey. And when you have a system that has been broken for over a decade, you cannot fix that system within 2 years. But I can tell you that the worst of the challenges are over. We need to begin to now, build on the stability that we have, and we are beginning to see some traction in terms of price reduction, but we need to address those critical components that was mentioned by my colleagues in your studio.
Okay.
The challenge of food, for instance, is still a major issue. The challenge of transportation, that is energy, is still a major issue. The challenge of transport, housing, health, these are basic things that consume close to 80 to 90% of the income of the average Nigerian. So we need to do a lot more. But I must acknowledge, because I'm aware that the president has set up a presidential committee on food, on this food crisis, chaired by the vice president. So this matter is not all being left to the ministry. The presidency is stepping into it and bringing all the critical stakeholders on board to address it as an emergency. So for me, I think progress is being made, but a lot more still needs to be done to address specifically this cost of living crisis that we are still dealing with.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Yusuf. We'll return to you. Let's see if we can bring up Dr. Alphonsus Iyang from Uyo, if he's there with us. Speaking of food, Dr. Iyang is an agribusiness entrepreneur, and so also the national president of the National Palm Produce Association of Nigeria. So we should be talking to you about food and the prices and how they come in. Let's hear your opening comments with regard to this discussion.
Thank you very much, Cyril, and thank you very much, colleagues, for your very insightful opening remarks. Looking at the inflation in Nigeria, we have seen some change in numbers in the last few months, and looking at food and agriculture, I will want to say that the policy of government to give some waivers for some industries, processors and millers to import some grains and cereals into the country the last few 10 to 12 months have also helped in this drop in inflation, especially in food prices. How sustainable this will be is a question that we all have to seek answers for. The reason being that we need to really look at the numbers, the statistics. Does it mean that more and more farmers have returned to farms? Farmers that were sent away from the farms by militants, by bandits, and terrorists? Does it mean that more and more farmers now have access to fertilizers to be able to go to farm? That is why the prices of food is dropping? Or does it mean that the prices of fertilizers and other inputs, planting materials, and all the accompanying inputs have dropped? That's why we are seeing the inflation or the rise in the prices of food dropping. I will not say so in a way, because like in the area of fertilizers, we are seeing the prices of fertilizers hitting the roof. In the last 1 year, that has not helped farmers. We are still hearing the same complaints from Zamfara, from Sokoto, from Kebbi, and many states in the north central and the northwest about insecurity that have not allowed them to return to the farms. If they even do, it's only farms within their neighborhood, which has not really helped in food production. So looking at these scenarios and the fact that prices of foods are dropping, we really need to seek answers to this so that we can be able to tackle the issues from the right perspective. Because we don't know how sustainable it will be for us, for industries, manufacturers, food processors and millers to continue to rely on windows being opened by the federal government for them to bring in grains and cereals to feed their meals in order to sustain jobs, in order to at least keep their businesses going. So agriculture is an area that we really need to take a very good look at if we really want a more sustainable progress in the country. It is very important that we find out, are we producing more food that has resulted in the drop in the prices of food? Cassava in particular has really dropped in its price this year, so also rice. Have we checked, is it the price of rice or rice paddy? Because we also need to know, where is the paddy coming in from? Has this led to creation of more jobs? Does this mean that we now have increased the number of hectares that we plow in the rice producing belts? Does it mean that we now have more farmers producing cassava? So these are some of the things we need to seek answers for, so that we can know, is it real growth or is just for the meantime as a response to government's intervention in order to be able to save jobs in the food processing and agriculture sector. So this will be my opening remarks.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll return to you. But back here in the Abuja studio, one other basic question which we would like to put to Professor Waleke is understanding these figures would be to take a step further and say, how well or how will the decline in inflation, since we agree that it's slowing down, how will this impact Nigeria's GDP growth? And what are the sectors that are most likely to benefit?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Earlier on I talked about the fact that, yes, we are beginning to see, again, improvement in GDP numbers. The second quarter of 2025 GDP number, GDP came in at 4.23%, higher than the 3.13% we saw in the first quarter of 2025. And I also said that if you have increase in GDP and you don't have slower inflation, moderation in inflation rate, the common man will not feel it. And that's why I also said, I was happy that we are beginning to see this deceleration in prices, particularly food. So how will it now impact GDP? Now, the agri sector, for example, contributes about 25% to GDP, the agri sector. So what that tells you is that if the agri sector can experience significant growth, that will also impact positively on GDP. If you look at the last GDP report by the National Bureau of Statistics, the one I just mentioned, GDP grew by 4.23%. The agri sector's growth rate, has remained weak at less than 3%. In fact, the agri sector grew by just 2.8%. The manufacturing sector even grew by less than 2% in that quarter two report. It was the services sector that powered growth more or less. So for us to begin to see inclusive growth more or less, the one that will impact the common man, we need to also grow the agri sector and grow the manufacturing sector, grow the, if you like, the employment elastic sectors, these sectors that have the ability to create more jobs. So if we have growth in the services sector, in say the banking sector, the financial services sector, because those ones have been witnessing very strong positive growth rates, their employment elasticity, very low. Low in the sense that you ask yourself, how many people can work in that industry? Or we have growth in the telecom sector, again, services sector. How many people can that sector, compared to agriculture? So we need to really push the agri value chain, where we can now begin to see, a whole number of jobs, and that will also help to boost the output. That will help to bring down, food price. I keep saying it. If we're able to boost output, the agri output, and also we're able to connect from the farm, to market. Again, one of the challenges we're having today is that link between farm to market is broken. It's broken by, first, you have issues to do with even poor storage facilities. Today we have post-harvest losses. We record as much as 30 to 40% in post-harvest losses. So even the ones we produce, we lose so many because of lack of storage facilities. So it's important we begin to see how we can also invest in cold storage facilities in order to reduce post-harvest losses. The other issue too has to do with even transport. The logistics to move them from the farm to the market. And then of course power. Power is also an issue. So these are, if you like, structural issues that we must tackle to be able to boost agriculture. Once you boost agriculture, you're also boosting the GDP component, because, as I said, agri is contributing as much as 25%, to GDP.
All right, we have a couple of reports which should also go with this discussion and speak to the issues at stake. Let's take this one from Lagos.
According to recent data from the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's inflation rate declined to 18.02% in September from 20.12% in August 2025, same year. This decline is attributed to a moderation in food prices, which dropped to 16.87% from 21.87% during the same period. The Minister of State, Agriculture and Food Security, Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, attributed this decline to the government's efforts to prioritize food security and stabilize food supplies.
We injected a large volume, almost close to 500,000 metric tons or more of wheat, and including maize, cassava, and all the other commodities that we promoted.
I visited a popular food market to gauge the impact of the drop in inflation on vendors and assess the relief it brings to customers.
Some of the foodstuffs have reduced, like rice. The farming rice, the paint was 8,000 before, but now it's 7,000. And the Nigerian rice was 7,000 before, but it's now 6,000 for the paint rubber. And the beans the brown one was 6,000. And the white one was 5,500 before, but now the brown one is 5,000 for the paint rubber, and the white one is also 5,000 for the paint rubber.
Too much. The thing is that some of the goods we sell used to be too expensive, but we thank God there is now a bit of change. Things are not coming down. We also appreciate the effort of the government.
It's the farm food that reduced. The other food that are preservable, they didn't reduce because they know you can preserve it. But like yam and vegetable and plantain, they will reduce because they are perishable stuff.
Gari, rice, groundnut oil. We thank God that they are no longer pricey compared to how it was before.
Experts caution that while the inflation decline offers some benefit, Nigerians need more robust economic solutions to improve purchasing power and drive growth.
Since food is a key driver of inflation, and food is something that touches everybody, one way to ensure that the gains at the macro level percolate down all the line is to consolidate on gains that affect food. And one thing to do that is to intervene with policies. So anything that supports food production, from issues of seedlings provision, issues around fertilizers, issues around connecting centers of production with centers of consumption, with logistics, infrastructure.
Food accounts for a greater percentage of the expenditure of Nigerians. So when the price of food comes down, automatically it will translate into reduction in price of goods and services.
For experts, translating the decline in inflation into sustainable economic growth and improved living standards for Nigerians will require continued efforts by policymakers, stakeholders, and citizens to address key structural challenges and drive economic diversification. In Lagos, Adejoke Odeka.
All right, that report from Lagos. Back here in the studio, and let's put this to Dr. Wadinga. It has to do with the CBN's monetary policies. And when we had Dr. Muda Yusuf, he said steps were taken, they were absolutely necessary. However, they've also triggered some, challenges of their own, but those steps were necessary to be taken. And of course, he admits that they're beginning to see a change. Perhaps, as he says, the worst is over. But let's talk about the CBN's monetary policies and how they've impacted and how they've led to the situation we have today.
Thank you, sir. You see, the CBN monetary policy is usually a frontal response to what happens in the fiscal arena. And looking at the CBN's effort in taming inflation, we look at the reasons from the data. What are the inflation drivers? Again, you go back to the structure and look at those elements. And those are the elements that will inform CBN's monetary policy. For example, when you look at the reasons, the first on the item of CBN report is foreign exchange stability. But it's not just stability, Cyril. There are two elements in foreign exchange management. Stability over time, the level of the foreign exchange. We are coming from somewhere. 2020, the exchange rate was 380. Then you move along the line to 2024. And what do you see there? 1,670, naira to $1. And you move to 2025. What do you have there? 1,555 naira. Now, yes, it's stable, but is that enough? It's just a necessary condition. But sufficient condition is for it to come down. You see, Cyril, let's tell ourselves the truth. Have a walk across supermarkets, ShopRite and others from here to Ibadan, Lagos. They are empty halls. Why? Yes, foreign exchange is stable. But is it at a level that will afford replenishment of shelf items? No. That's why they are empty. And that's why we interrogate the NBS data. Because this particular parametric outcome, parameters, will inform CBN's monetary policy. But be as it may, since we said, okay, inflation is coming down, then we now talk of, how to further sustain the reduction. But we need to see, one, as I said, is it actually coming down? If we say yes, and we agree with the argument, then we move next. Yes, generally, food prices have come down in the past few months. But again, you go and look at the data. Where did the food prices come down? It's not because of input prices. No. It's because the border was open, liberalized, and food came in and the price crashed. The next element in that basket is then you ask yourself, apart from the prices of those items, what actually are the causes for those food items to still be volatile? Yes, agree, we are still lagging behind in value chain. Most of these farm products that we churn out, and September is usually harvest time. So there could be positive impact of that harvest time on prices. as the year is coming to an end. But still, the issue of value chain addition, along the line, the issue of transportation costs because of the removal of fuel subsidy. These are the, inflation drivers. But, the federal government has arranged in place, means of cushioning up this aspect of, fueling inflation. But that is another program entirely. But there are programs on ground by the federal government, not just to cushion up, but also to alleviate the sufferings of the general populace that are in the vulnerable groups.
Okay, let me extend the Forex stability argument just a little bit more with Dr. Muda Yusuf, who started talking about it, that it's stable now. From what was close at one point in time to almost 2,000 naira. We hear today it's about 1,400 and 455 or 458 or thereabouts. However, Dr. Yusuf, is it that Nigerians are asking for a quick return to the days when it used to be 380 or 385 to the dollar, and that would be what would be seen reasonably as a reasonable level for the naira to operate. How do you see that?
Realistic. Because we also need to manage expectations. We are coming from a policy regime that was clearly not sustainable. We were living in a lot of illusion all along. That was when we were buying fuel at 185, exchange rate was 200 and something. Those things were not sustainable. If we had continued on that trajectory, the whole economy would have collapsed by now. We will not even be talking about this kind of inflation that you are talking about. We'll be talking about a situation that is similar to what you had in Zimbabwe or Venezuela or some of those countries where their macroeconomic fundamentals have completely collapsed. That is what will have happened. So what has happened with this administration is pulling the economy back from the brink. That is what has happened. So I don't envisage a situation where exchange rate will go back to 300, you go and buy fuel at 180, 200. That is not likely to happen. Because it is better to situate the economy at a level where it is sustainable and ensure that we pull all the policy levers to ensure that the situation does not deteriorate any further. That is what is important. Now, economists have different, postulations or estimation of what the equilibrium state will be. But the exchange rate is a price. It's a function of our demand. It's a function of the supply. If we have a situation where we're able to boost the supply of foreign exchange by increasing exports, both oil and non-oil and all of that, significantly, maybe 3, 4, 5 times fold, yes, we can have some significant impact in the reduction in inflation, reduction in the exchange rate. But let me also say this. A strong currency tends to encourage more importation. Importation is not a good thing for any economy. If you look at what we call the national income equation, import is a negative factor for any economy. It's negative for the economy. So one of the things that this reform has done is to compel a lot of inward-looking disposition among the citizens and among businesses. Because when you have a situation where when you import, it's a bit more challenging, you are forced to look inwards. That is why for many businesses now, backward integration, recycling, and all of those things are gaining a lot of traction. So what is important Whether it's going to be 300, it's going to be 500, it is what is sustainable.
Okay.
What the macroeconomic fundamentals can support. So that we don't create an illusion, we don't create a bubble for the citizens that could lead to a complete collapse of the economy. So that is the way the managers of the economy that is the way they are looking at it, and that is where I think we should look at it. We should look at what the macroeconomic fundamentals can support in terms of exchange rate, in terms of fuel, and all other critical prices. But having said that, let me also make this very important point. Because what we are dealing with now is a situation of acute poverty. That is the most important challenge. All this conversation about inflation is about poverty. Because the worst enemy of the average Nigerian or of the poor is inflation. Because it erodes purchasing power very rapidly. It's like your income is evaporating. So we need to put all the policy levers together, and we need to see this as an assignment or a responsibility for all the tiers of government. The federal government, the state government, and the local governments. Luckily, at least their allocations have improved significantly, even though it is in nominal terms, but it has still increased significantly. So rather than be using all the money's additional revenue to be building roads, to be building bridges, to be building airports, they should target things that address the poverty that we are discussing. I'm not saying that roads are not important. I'm not saying that airports are not important. Mm-hmm. But you recognize that the biggest challenge now is poverty.
So this
you are taking subsidy away. Yeah, Cyril?
Yes, Dr. Yusuf, but that's the whole crux of the matter now. You say, well, there's a nominal increase in what's been given to the states and local governments, but you would rather spend that amount on things that would address the poverty level rather than some grandiose projects. Again, there are those who would say these projects also drive, industrialization and also open up the space for investments.
No, Cyril, we need a balance here. We need a balance. Take, for instance, for the average Nigerian, particularly those in the cities, the cost of transportation is impossible. Some of them spend close to 50% of their income on transportation because the public investment in public transportation is extremely very low.
Okay.
Over 90% of public transportation is owned by the private sector. The private sector cannot give you a social transportation scheme. It is the government that can provide it. So we need to see a lot more of this investment in public transportation, where people can go and ride at a highly subsidized rate. You have removed subsidy on some things, but we need to bring back the subsidy to transportation. We need to bring back the subsidy to agriculture. We need to bring back the subsidy to education. We need to bring back the subsidy to health. This is the way to redistribute it, so that the ordinary Nigerian will not be crying the way they are crying. So we need to address those critical issues and ensure that these subsidies are moved away, as it has been done, to address these critical elements that is putting a lot of pressure on the average Nigerians. That is what should be, and this should apply to all tiers of government. This is not just a federal government issue alone. All of them have to put something on the table, and we need to activate all the key policies. Our fiscal policy must target this as a deliberate act of policy. Our tax policy must target these poverty issues deliberately. Our trade policy must target it. Our monetary policy must target it. That is, we need to drive policies to address this issue. We have achieved some stability, but we now need to address poverty issues. That, for me, is the most important thing that we need to deal with now.
Okay. Thank you so much. Dr. Young, let's have Dr. Young on the line, and we'd like to tie this up with the matter of improved agricultural production. And you raised a number of questions. yes, the prices came down, would it be a little bit beyond the question of being harvest time? Was it more in production, the supply chains, and as Dr. Bakari had mentioned, the question of value addition, which he believes is quite low. So what are the policies that we could drive towards improving this so that this reduction in the rate of inflation that we have acknowledged would be sustainable, and that, in fact, inflation should drop even further?
You see, looking at a sustainable policy that to drive agriculture, especially agricultural production and value chain development in Nigeria, I want to congratulate the federal government for the bold step it took in creating the Ministry of Livestock Development in Nigeria. That is a good one. Globally, that is a practice. And now, between now and maybe the next 5 years, we are going to see the whole potentials in the livestock industry being harnessed and developed. Jobs will be created. Millionaires will be created around the value chain of animal husbandry and livestock development across the whole country. That one alone is one policy that we can say is a policy for Nigeria and for Nigerians, and it's a policy for prosperity. And we want to implore the federal government to take another look at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. We will want to see 3 crops. For some parts of this country, pre-independence, post-independence, 3 crops were the mainstay of their economy: cashew, coffee, oil palm, coconut, cocoa, coffee, and the rest of them. We will want to see a national 3-crop development council or authority set up, or a ministry of 3 crops to be established in Nigeria, just like we have the Ministry of Livestock after very many years of agitation. Globally, if you see wherever you find great prosperity and development in 3-crop development, you see Southeast Asia, you see what Malaysia and Indonesia and Thailand have done to oil palm and coconuts. They are being handled by Ministry of Plantation Development. So the Ministry of Agriculture will have problems looking at short gestation period crops and plantation crops, and they don't go. And we have a lot of short gestation period crops: sorghum, soya beans, maize, rice, guinea corn, and the rest of them. And there are so many. But we have like few 3 crops that have suffered a lot of policy somersault in the federal ministry, and we will want a Ministry of 3-crop development or a Ministry of Plantation to be established to take care of 3 crops. Look at what cocoa means now to global economy. Look at oil palm. Oil palm now, the price has been looking north in the past 2 years, and it's like it's not going to come down because of international politics in Indonesia and Malaysia that is affecting these prices. And so we need to look at policies that will make us produce more. Take, for example, I'm currently in Akwa Ibom State to assist the government implement a 3-crop program. Under the Akwa Ibom 3-crop development program, targeted at creating 100,000 hectares of oil palm, coconut, coffee, rubber, and cocoa in the next 5 years. So you see that not just the federal government, the state governments. Cyril, if you look at it, that in the last 2 years, the most stable sector in the state government have been the civil service. No strike. The subsidy that has been removed has made a lot of money available for state governments. And state governments pay salary effortlessly. At 70,000, 80,000, some have increased it to 100,000. They are paying effortlessly, no agitation, no strike. Yes, this is good, but how many civil servants do we have in all these states? Some under 100,000. But these are states that boast of 5 million, 6 million, 7 million citizens. So we want to see state government come up with policies that will work for the people. And the policies that we believe will work for the people is policies that will enable the people to produce more. And then in producing more in primary production, we need to look at the value chain development. Look at the difference between cashew nuts, raw cashew nuts, and processed cashew. So huge. So we want to see how primary production can be encouraged among the rural people. We want to see policies that create clusters of rural farmers. We need to see policies that make available for rural farmers inputs, planting materials, fertilizers, and all the accompanying inputs to enable them to produce more at small clusters. And doing this, they are not just producing more. This producing more will help them to fight poverty, will help them to fight disease, will help them to generate prosperity and wealth within their rural communities and households. So we want to see policies at the state levels. The federal government will have difficulty bringing policies on agriculture that will be working in my village and in your village. But the state governments can. So we want to see the state government, as more money is coming, money from energy, removal of subsidy on energy, removal of subsidy on the petroleum products, removal of, and then increase in the prices of telecommunications. And this money is returning to the state, to the three tiers of governments as taxes. So we want to see them use this money to develop the households, put factors of production in the hand of the rural people. Let the people produce more. In doing so, they fight poverty by themselves. When the people produce more, they don't have to wait for government to come and ask them to queue and line up to collect some trader money or some kind of money that can be codenamed by state governments. So we don't want to continue to raise a beggarly population. Let the state governments, especially, make available in the hands of the rural people and households factors of production. Let them make available to them planting materials. Let them give them seedlings and fertilizers for them to produce at homestead. Cereal homestead agriculture has become a major factor in agricultural production now. In India, it is a major focus. In Southeast Asia, it's a major focus. Homestead production. Imagine palm trees being planted at homestead. Imagine coconuts, imagine coffee and the rest being planted, 5 trees, 2 trees, 4 trees. By the time you aggregate them, you are counting in millions of hectares.
Okay.
We want policies to encourage this, and it will really help in value chain development. Investors will not go to where they don't have enough primary production. Aggregators and investors and value chain players and processors go to where they have enough to buy and process.
All right. Thank you so much.
If not enough, they won't go there.
Okay. Thanks so much. At this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, phone lines will be open. Hopefully, we'll get some calls in. Those who have comments or questions to ask, I guess we'll address those issues that you might raise. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also encourage you to go straight to the point. Don't bother too much about the greetings. Just a simple hello will do. We'll start off this segment with another in our reports. This one is from Enugu.
Inflation figures from the National Bureau of Statistics in recent times have not only brought fresh hopes to Nigerians, but also represent a positive change and relief from the gloomy economic narrative that has plagued the nation in the past. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the inflation rates have consistently been on the decline since April 2025, with the highest drop being from 20.12% in August to 18.02% in September 2025. These figures may sound ambiguous to an ordinary man in the street, but he can relate it with the decrease in prices of foodstuff in the market.
Some things came down, like gari and beans. Like gari now, a bag is you can get it for something, it's something. Before, as of last month or last 2 months, it was 60 something. Yeah. So as of beans, beans depend on names. We have Patasco, Iron, Brown, and others. As of Patasco, we used to get it 150 per bag, but now it's 90, 100. So we actually sell cup 250 now. Painter is 4,000 naira. So, but before it was 5,000, 6,000. Then as of iron beans, it's the same thing. Painter now is 4,500, but before it was 6,000 and bag was 170, 160. But now you can get it out cheapest 110 or 120. So most of other things came down actually. At least it's reduced than before. Yeah.
There is a lot of differences from the last market I attended and today. As you can see, these onions, I bought them 500 naira. Last market I attended, I bought just half of it, 500 naira.
Rice is coming down. This thing, groundnut oil, the price is okay. But not only this red oil, and that one is too costly now.
According to analysts, the drop in food prices has been a major contributor to the significant decline in Nigeria's overall inflation rate, noting that the fall to 18.02% in September 2025 is the lowest in 3 years. They maintain that the disinflation trend reflects gains from economic reforms, foreign exchange rate stability, and seasonal food supply dynamics.
Some things are affordable. We thank God for that. Let them be continued like that, as we people can afford it.
Those we that are sellers, then people that are buying from us, they're also feeling better based on how prices of goods are going down.
Meanwhile, inflation is projected to decline further in October 2025, supported by sustained forex stability and improved domestic supply conditions. In Enugu, Susan Eze.
All right, that report from Enugu. Just a quick bit on that report, and I'd like to take that straight to. Okay. All right, the lines are open. We have a caller who's calling in from. Calling in from London, and. Okay, let's just take this call in and quickly we'll return to the matter of that report from Enugu. Hello, just introduce yourself and go ahead with your question or comment.
Hi, so the name is Ben of not Oji. I agree with the agribusiness person who was speaking. We need to focus on inclusive growth. We need to forget all the big data on the government's economic growth of 4.2% and all those nonsense we keep hearing, all those narratives we keep hearing every day. We don't need all of those. We need to focus on inclusive growth. The government cannot be saying that there's growth in the economy when we have 139 million people living in multidimensional poverty. It doesn't make any sense. Common sense dictates that government needs to focus on the real sector. We need to focus on agriculture. We need to start producing food. Let's produce food for even the people in the country to eat. Let us focus on that. Let's forget all the narrative. This whole idea of dashing money, conditional cash transfers and dashing money all across the country is all part of what is fueling inflation. We need to see how funds can be channeled productively to the real sector in terms of making sure that both farmers, new businesses are being established in various communities, and making sure that as much as possible, government is focused on creating jobs through enterprises. Even if it is micro, small enterprises that are being developed across the entire country, that will make a lot of sense. I mean, like, let's take a typical example. Dashing people 30,000 naira every month in the name of public works program. How does that help people? Even if you do somebody 30,000 for the first 6 months, what happens after 6 months? So these are the things I'm saying. Government should be focused on real sector. Create more jobs. Let more young people go back to the farms. Make sure that the farming is more attractive to more of our young people in rural areas, and even urban farming is also in vogue. There are lots of initiatives across the country. We need to stop dashing money. This dashing money syndrome and sort of making weaponizing poverty across the country is what has cost us where we are today. We need to go back to the drawing board. So that is my position. Let government stop wasting money on frivolous display of cash and disbursing it to people across the country. They need to focus on real enterprise development, which I believe is key to poverty reduction.
Yes. Okay. Now we can go back to Dr. Alfonso Sinyang. And I did say there was a bit I wanted to take up from the report which came in from Enugu that has to do with the cost of palm oil not dropping. You heard one of the traders there say cooking oil has reduced except for red oil. So, you're president of the Palm Produce Association, and what's in that sector that refuses to come down?
Well, thank you, Cyril. The politics of the international politics of palm oil is taken very seriously by members of the Council of Palm Oil Producing Countries, of which I am the Nigerian focal person. And Indonesia and Malaysia, these two countries control over 80% of global production. And there have been some policies in Indonesia in the last 10 months, which commenced 1st of January 2021, that it has to do with B35. B35 is biological 35, which says that for every diesel that is being produced in Indonesia, 35% of it must be palm oil. And I hear also, and I pray it is not true, that they were targeting B50 against 2030, but that it has been brought down to 2026. So which means that more and more uses for palm oil, alternative uses for palm oil will take place in Indonesia. So Indonesia has also increased the export price for palm oil. So for every exporter, there are some levies you need to pay to government. And Indonesia now rely more on renewable energy, not what we use palm oil for, but palm oil is now being used to drive their economy, is now used to power their industries, not in the kitchen, not mostly in the food industries. You know, Indonesia is the largest producer of palm oil, yet they are the largest consumers of palm oil, but not in the kitchen. But we use it in our kitchen and in the food industry. And whatever policy that comes from Indonesia, a country that produces 50 million tons of palm oil per year, and Nigeria producing 1.5 million tons per year. So you can see the difference is so much. And whatever policy that comes from there affects every part of the world. And this is the major policy that has affected in the last year plus the high cost of palm oil. And until something is done locally,
okay,
Cyril, until something is done locally, we will not we will not be able to get out of this. The reason is this. In 1990, we had only one noodle company that 20% of it is palm oil. But now we have almost 50 noodle brands in the whole country. All of them use palm oil. Toothpaste, makeup, lipstick, butter, margarine, many other uses have been found for palm oil in Nigeria as the economy is expanding and growing. And look at soap and detergents. When we were growing up, we only knew of Elephant and Omo. Now we can't count the number of detergent brands we have in Nigeria. With a population of 230 million, every one of them must take their baths. And 70% of every soap you see is palm oil. 70% of every detergent you find is palm oil. So population is growing, and now, but the local production of palm oil is not growing. And we have been saying government need to take a second look at the policy to encourage Nigerians to produce more.
All right. Okay.
In producing more cereal, let me round it up this way. In producing more, we need to make available for households in Nigeria. Take, for example, every rural household in southern part of Nigeria and also in the north central are given 150 seedlings of Tenera hybrid oil palm seedlings. That family automatically becomes a millionaire family after 3 years, and it is sustained for over 30 years. We want to produce more. Government should come assist us in producing more. Otherwise, the prices of palm oil will continue to grow. We are ready to produce more. We need the support of state and local and federal government to enable households produce more. Okay. Because more and more uses are being found for palm oil.
Right.
Recently, they tested aviation fuel being produced from palm oil, and it is being commercialized in Indonesia. In the next 2 years, it will become a global commodity that palm oil will be used to fly aeroplanes. What do you think will happen to the prices of palm oil? So we need to do more locally, and our association is ready to work with government to make sure that we produce more.
All right, thank you very much. So let me just go straight to Dr. Muda Yusuf now and say, well, this is how it ties up. And we just used palm oil as just one product, an example of how global economic trends and politics, can affect policies locally. And so I just want to tie this up with what Nigeria needs to do now that we say inflation is slowing down. And as you said earlier on, we're out of, the worst is over. So how will global economic trends, international politics, and protectionism in, other countries affect what goes on locally here, and what policies do we need to put in place to insulate Nigeria from these distortions?
Our destiny is in our own hands. It's not a matter of global politics and all of that. Nigeria is blessed in so many ways. Listen to what Dr. Yang just said. If you have people like him with all the knowledge he has about palm produce, palm oil, palm oil and the rest of that, we have several thousands of people like him who are professionals in different sectors of the economy. We can produce. We are blessed with the right climate. We are blessed with the resources. What is important is to get the right policies to drive productivity. It's a question of productivity and getting our priorities right as far as government spending and all of that is concerned. Look at what Dangote is doing in the petroleum sector. For over 20 years, we were not able to run a refinery. Look at what he has done. If you can support people like that across different sectors, I mean, we will not be complaining about, scarcity and all these issues. So it comes back to the issue of what our government does, government at the federal, government at the state, government at the local government, to support productivity across all of these sectors. And that is why I was talking about identifying critical policy instruments. Take, for instance, fiscal policy. There are some things you require for production. If you look at how much it costs you to import some of those things to support production, you'll be shocked at what people go through to get these things to support their production. Because no country is self-sufficient in everything. If there are things we need to import to support production, we should make that import as seamless, as easy, as accessible as possible.
All right.
You should de-emphasize this idea of relying on import duty to be generating revenue. It should not apply to all sectors.
Okay.
I mean, we are talking about health sector. They have a lot of issues, importation. We are talking about agri. We are talking about the cost of inputs. Talk to farmers. One of the biggest problems they have is the cost of inputs. We are talking about financing. All of these things are within our control.
Okay. Let me ask you to pause a while here, and let's get this call in from Macaulay. I believe it's calling in from Edo State. Hello. Hello, caller from Edo. Macaulay from
Yes,
Edo.
good evening.
Yes, good evening. Go ahead.
I want to observe that you are leaving out a critical area in dealing with our food security problem. And that critical area is the problem of insecurity in our communities. I am from Edo. As I speak to you now, I'm speaking from Ekuma, Edo Central. And people can no longer go to farm. Because when they go to farm every day, farmers are kidnapped from their farms. Women who go to the villages to buy food items, they are kidnapped on their way to the market or from the market. A lot of people are scared. They can't go to the farm. So we should address the problem of insecurity. Look at Plateau, look at Benue, look at Niger, look at Edo, Kogi. I think that is the area the federal government, the state government should focus attention, because our farmers have been driven away from their farms and from their communities. That's a major area I think we should focus our attention on, how to deal with the security challenges we now face in this country.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Macaulay from Edo. Well, back here in the Abuja studio, again, tying up with agriculture, and you started talking about some of the factors that led to the drop in food prices. Yes, we acknowledge it's a harvest season where you're likely to see more of the farm produce in the markets. But again, you also alluded to the opening of the borders for importation. But again, this last caller is drawing attention to security challenges which are bound to affect increased productivity and production of food, which of course in the long run will detract from the slowing down of inflation rate and the gains recorded in the drop in food prices. How do you reconcile these?
Yeah, Cyril, I stay mostly in the rural area in Adamawa. And I have a touch of the reality on ground.
Okay, just before you address that, let's take this call. Aminu calling in from Abuja. Hello, Aminu, go ahead quickly.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes.
Good morning. I'll be good.
Well, just go ahead. Aminu, it doesn't really matter.
I want to
just
talk
go
about
ahead.
this transport. I don't know how you can I don't know how can you advise them about this transport, because government has done well. Number one, they has put up the CNG free for the commercial vehicles. But yet, up to today, we are still carrying the passenger from here to Lagos by 30,000, which is so all the commercial, they have done it for them. So if you can have a way to advise the government about that.
Okay.
So I think if transport comes down, I think something will still be okay. The food is already coming down. But the security wala is not going down. There's good transportation and some people proud that no matter what, we will continue to deal with Nigerians. It's not government, it's ourselves. That's my advice.
All right. Thank you very much, Aminu from Abuja. Thank you. Yes, Dr.
Yes. Still, Cyril, you see, what happens in the rural areas is typically lack of infrastructure in addition to value chain absence. Infrastructure, not in terms of roads alone. You see, the north, mostly basement areas, have enough rainfall during rain season, but after which it runs off to Lake Chad. The governors that are having increased fiscal allocation now should emphasize construction of, say, earthen dams across, so that you have dry season irrigation farmers all over employing youthful population that are unemployed. That is one. Besides, preponderance of these farmers do not know what to do with the harvest, maize, rice, and so on. Most of the towns, yes, affected by insecurity. Yes, most people have moved to the urban centers, but they still go back to farm. And after farming, what next? No cottage industries to process this product. They gather them, in warehouses and waiting for off-takers from Kano, Jos, the cities. And they experience losses. But again, when we say price went down, was it because of increased productivity? No. The borders were open. And so this, produce came in. The danger of that is that it is short-lived, in the sense that by next year, we may encounter food insecurity. Why? Because, yes, price of produce went down, but the input prices still remain high or went up. Typical example, 50 kg of fertilizer that started at the beginning of the season at 35, went up to 75,000 naira. And that is how some of the farms could not be fertilized. I participate in farming, Cyril, and I know what you're talking about. That is real. Again, the man that spoke on palm oil. Yes, this palm oil issue is doable. I have tried planting about 1,000 high-yield palm oil seedlings I obtained from palm oil research in Benin. And the palm oil are doing well, especially where I have irrigation facilities. For quite some time, and they started producing just 3 years after. And I've been using the produce for domestic consumption. And that can be expanded. But you cannot plant palm oil in the north, or pear, or whatever, if you don't have earthen dam to support. And these are the things that these governors with increased fiscal allocation should emphasize on. Value addition, opening up cottage to process. And typical example again, Cyril, you see across Maiduguri, Jos, Bauchi, low small-scale poultry farmers, fish farmers, do not process feeds for their animals. They have to travel all the way to Jos or Kaduna or Ibadan to get. But the material, the soya beans, the maize, and so on, are evacuated from these areas to the centers where they are processed. Why is the value addition? None. These are the value drivers for the inflation. And if we don't address them, then this so-called drop in price is short-lived. Because next year, or in the immediate long run, we will have challenge.
Prof.
Thank you so much, the conversations have been very interesting. Now, if you look at that inflation report by the National Bureau of Statistics, something strikes me, and that thing is the spread, between the inflation rates among the states. Take some time and look at the state's profile. You realize that inflation rate in some states is as high as 28%. Mm-hmm. In some others, Ekiti State, for example, recorded the highest inflation at 28%. In some other states, it's as low as 2.8%. As a matter of fact, on a month-on-month basis, if you take Akwa Ibom where he is, and Cross River, you're even having minus. So you can see the spread is very wide. And why is that so? If you know that, for example, food prices are very low in Akwa Ibom, and you are in a state where it's as high as 30, then exactly what stops you from? So that tells you that there's a problem with transport costs. Mm-hmm. People have talked about transport costs. That also tells you there's a problem with insecurity. So you see the transport cost and insecurity, playing a role in this disparity.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll go more on that disparity, but let's get this call in. And
okay.
Ismaila calling from Abuja. Ismaila from Abuja.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Go ahead.
My question goes to Prof.
Okay.
So, we've been saying tariff is coming down, prices are going down, but how about yam? Nobody is saying anything about yam prices. Yam prices remain high. And we don't know whether they are not among the stable food we have in this country. You don't buy yam. The rice is down, this is down, that is down. But yam, how about yam?
Yes. The question he said is to me, Abi.
Okay. Ismaila, Prof. Thank you. Right.
Okay, yes. You singled out one item. When we say prices are coming down, or rather, the rate of increase is slowing, is with respect to a basket of items. The National Bureau of Statistics has 940, items in that basket. It used to be 740. I think now over 900. So it is the average movement that is reported. So when you hear inflation rate has dropped to 18.02%, it simply is telling you that the average price movement, slowed. The rate of increase slowed by that on a year-on-year basis. So it's not with respect to a particular item. But in specific terms, again, based on the ones mentioned in that report, potatoes, tomatoes, you can, I think you can fact check that. Beans, and a good number of them, actually, in terms of the rate of increase, and actually dropped. Now, back to the point I was making, Cyril, particularly with respect to, what we need to do to make it sustainable. Now, if you look at agric today, the agric sector, it's also where we don't find a number of youths, playing in. This is a country where you have, in terms of demographics, the youths dominate. But in the agric space, you don't have many youths there. And that's also why you have the agric sector. The agric sector has a lot of informality. As a matter of fact, the National Bureau of Statistics says 92% of what happens, the activities there are informal in the agric sector. So you don't have youth there, and that's partly because it's not attractive. One of the things I will recommend to the government is to intentionally prioritize, the study of agriculture in our tertiary institutions, in our universities. Okay, give people who want to study agriculture, preference. The student loan scheme, for example, should give preference to, students in agriculture, and possibly even, scholarships. That is one way you can also encourage youth to come in. And when they are finishing, you are also ready to give them loans, particularly now that the Bank of Agriculture is being recapitalized. Okay, part of what I expect them to be doing is to also ensure, soft loans to graduates of universities of, agriculture who study related courses. So that's one. The other thing too is the issue of mechanization. There's this saying that agriculture without mechanization is like a vehicle without wheels. Okay, so you can't overemphasize the role of mechanization in agriculture, whether in terms of preparing the land, for planting, even up to the point of harvesting, storage, processing. You need mechanization, and that's why I was worried when I read today that is in today's reports. I'm sure maybe you saw it. That you recall 4 months ago, the president launched about 2,000 tractors, were imported from Belarus. Okay, so the tractors were meant to be given to, farmers associations, either by way of direct sale or by way of lease or by way of setting up, tractor service centers in, some, areas, particularly where you have the, aggregation areas. Now, the tractors, the report is saying that the tractors are lying idle today in the premises of the National Agricultural and Seed Council. 4 months, many months after they have been, brought in, rotting away. And the reason given was that they're still waiting for directives, on how the modalities to, distribute them. So such things give concern when you have a government. The government is, keen about mechanizing agriculture, having brought in the vehicles, and then it is bureaucracy that is delaying the distribution. Okay. Now, finally, the point I want to make is, again, we need to scale agriculture. We need to move agriculture from the current cash-based, microcredit. That's the highest it gets. Agriculture, in terms of financing, gets less than 5% of, what is put out there. Okay, I told you it contributes 25% to GDP, but in terms of access financing agriculture, we often talk about 5%. So one thing we can do to scale the financing, in my view, is to also begin to see how states can come together, states within the region, for example, can come together and issue, something like bonds, issue agri bonds. Okay, we've seen examples of that in Brazil, we've seen examples of that in Senegal. They will issue agri bonds, and the proceeds will be used to finance industrial processing parks. Okay, and also finance cold. I talked about storage too. You can do cold, storage, facilities with the proceeds from that. And for them to do that, they can just maybe set up an SPV. That the SPV will be the ones to issue the bonds, and when the proceeds come, they will use that to, invest in agriculture. So agriculture requires patient capital. That's the point I'm making. Patient capital, not microcredit, not short-term loans.
All right, back to the phones now. We have Danjuma from Jos. If you're still on the line, thank you for calling in. Just go ahead. Danjuma from Jos. All right, we lost that call. And, we, at this point, will begin to wind down, and let me go on to Dr. Muda Yusuf. As you wind down your contributions, there are two issues I want you to address. One of them is the poverty rates and income inequality in Nigeria, and the prospects for Nigeria's economic growth in the next 5-10 years. I'd like you to look at that as you wind down your conclusions. Dr. Muda Yusuf.
Quality. First, the current reforms has seriously affected those with fixed income. And the number one in this sector, these segments, are the pensioners. For some workers or employees, some of their incomes have been adjusted fairly to take account of inflation. But for the pensioners, it has been extremely very, very miserable. I've seen professors who have been on the same pension for 10 years or more. And imagine the rate of inflation over the last 10 years. So we are seeing a lot of impoverization, a lot of poverty among pensioners. The other day I was listening to some pensioners talking about moving the minimum pension from 30,000 to 60,000 in Nigeria of today. What can that buy? So I want to appeal both to the federal government and to the state government. They should please revisit the plight of pensioners and ensure that at least there's some measure of adjustment, to what they earn. The second point, I go back to the issue of subsidy. If you are talking about inequality, we cannot run away from subsidy. What we should run away from as far as subsidy is concerned are subsidy regimes that are prone to abuse, are subsidy regimes that are being cornered by some elites and all of that. But when you talk about subsidizing some critical sectors, it helps to reduce inequality. When you subsidize education, when we subsidize health, when we subsidize public transportation, when we subsidize agriculture, those things have a way of reducing income inequality. Then the third point is to ensure that we activate policies to ensure that we increase productivity, especially in sectors that are job elastic. Because at the end of the day, we are talking about jobs. The more we make the economy inclusive, the more we reduce inequality. And we know that sectors like agri, like manufacturing, some service sector, and also sectors like that help a great deal in reducing inequality because they create a lot of jobs, including construction. Imagine the amount of jobs we create by just building a bungalow. Imagine the amount of people that will work on that kind of project. So supporting that system is extremely very important, to reduce inequality. Then also about productivity. All the inputs that key sectors use, if they are imported and if they are not available locally, please, we should remove all taxes, all import duties, all VAT, and make access to those inputs as cheap and accessible as possible. Finally, because we are talking about inflation, commodity associations also create a lot of problem in the value chain. Those who are commodity traders are making more money than the farmers. Yes, I know that we have post-harvest losses and all of that, but the gap, the difference between the farm gate price and market price is too wide. And most of these things are also driven by some of these trade unions or associations. They dictate prices in the markets. The same thing with all other unions in transportation, Okada riders, organizers. They have associations that fix prices. They're also not helping the poor. So we should have a way to engage them, to at least be a bit more empathetic, to sympathize with their fellow Nigerians by not just fixing prices arbitrarily. Even when the cost of their inputs are coming down, the prices of their services are not coming down. What can explain that? Because in a way, some of these associations also build something that look like a monopolistic framework that doesn't allow prices to adjust to market conditions. So these are some of the things I think we need to do to address the issue of both poverty and inequality.
All right, so I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Muda Yusuf. And, at the risk of sounding personal, I'm with you, particularly on the matter of pensioners, a segment I belong to. Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise and former DG of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, we thank you for being part of this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. And let's go over to Dr. Alphonsus Inyang, and as we wind down, your closing comments on how to sustain this. Well, some have said it might be short-lived, but how can it be sustained, and how can we ensure that the prices keep coming down and inflation is decelerated? as we close?
In looking at how we can sustain the current slowdown in inflation, I want to say my mind tells me next year will not be that all that the good news in terms of prices of food. The reason is that we started the season with fertilizer 28, 30, 35 at the maximum. Now people like us that are doing the dry season were buying at 75. Someone told me 78,000 naira per 50 kg bag yesterday. So we look at this and we say government needs to be intentional about agri inputs. Whether government need to set up a national agri inputs company or whatever, there need to be an intentional determination to deal with the issue of inputs. Right. Seeds, seedlings, fertilizers, and all that the farmers need in order for us to be able to produce at the price that we can be sure we will be able to sell and make profit and remain in business.
All right.
You know, let government and the farmer try to be on the same page, okay, which is let the farmer remain in business and let the consumer be happy buying at the price they are buying, and let government also be celebrating the stability in the prices, stability in the economy, and also the prosperity of the farmer. It is important that government also take into consideration the prosperity of the farmer. Otherwise, government will be celebrating the slowdown in inflation to the detriment of the farmer, who sells at a price less than how much he used to produce. We need also government to be intentional, as I said earlier, empower households to produce more at small level, at small holdings. It will help the economy of household, economy of communities, and also economy of the rural areas.
All right.
Because when they produce at small levels, they all contribute to the national basket. The national basket is so big that Nigerians, we need to bring our own little contribution to this basket in order for us to be able to continue to control inflation at a manageable way.
All right. Thank you.
Otherwise, continue to produce at a loss.
Right. So thank you very much, Dr. Alphonso Sinyang, agribusiness entrepreneur, national president of the National Palm Produce Association of Nigeria, and CEO of the Hebron Group. Thank you very much for being part of our discussion. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Right. Back here in the studio, closing comments in just a few minutes. Dr. Wadinga.
Yeah, thank you, Cyril. First of all, emphasis by the present government for taking care of the poor and the vulnerable. You know, as I said, the North is the center of poverty. And that, yes, productivity cannot be realized if those that are to produce are not even in production.
Yeah.
And so, since our economy is public sector driven, deliberate policy should be geared towards, infrastructure.
Okay.
Infrastructure in the rural areas. Infrastructure targeted at agricultural phenomena.
Okay. All right. So
infrastructure or value addition.
Okay.
That is the way to go.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Bakari Wadinga, retired Federal Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Finance. Thank you very much. Thank you for contributing to this program tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, Prof,
for having me.
In just a few seconds.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, it's for the government to work with the data that the MBS is publishing. That data says that the major drivers of inflation, include food, you have transport, you have housing, you have education, health. So going forward, the spending quality, should be tilted, towards those. So I want to see more money, go into health. I want to see more money go into education. I want to see more money go into food, and of course, transport. So that way, we will have a chance of having single-digit inflation. It's not just that of the central bank. The fiscal authority must also play a major role.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Uche Uwaleke, Director, Institute of Capital Market Studies, Nasarawa State University, Kefi, and President, Capital Market Academics of Nigeria. Thank you.
My pleasure, sir.
And that's our program today. We thank you for watching, for all those who contributed. Thank you for being part of it. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.